Good evening. Welcome to our ASIFA evening. I call it that even though some things here are not ASIFA branded, but ASIFA has been a great friend to the UCLA Film Archive in supporting and sponsoring restoration of classic animation. And I'd like to thank our two board members from ASIFA who've joined us tonight. I don't see others, but Frank Gladstone and Jerry Beck are both down here and will be joining us for a Q&A after the cartoons. We're presenting an eclectic program basically centered on Max and Dave Fleischer, with one ringer, one George Pal puppetoon. And you can't do a night of Paramount animation from that classic period and not have a puppetoon. So that's just to add spice to the program. The pictures all have been newly restored from either original elements or best surviving copies. We're very happy with Dinah, the Mills Brothers short, that we actually have a copy now that has original Paramount titles. Most of the black and white Fleischers had their titles removed for TV in the 50s, and it's very hard to find them. The good news is we've just now located a nitrate negative of Old Man of the Mountain with the Paramount titles, which actually have a live Cab Calloway background. So in 2 years, we will be showing that in our next festival. Funding is in place for that. One of the real surprises tonight is one of two lost Betty Boops. I mean, as you know from the program, the idea that a Betty Boop cartoon doesn't exist is kind of anathema, but it's true. There are two of them that didn't even make it to TV because the elements on them got lost between the late 30s and the late 50s. And Dave Girdstein found a 16 millimeter mute copy of the Betty Boop we're showing tonight in Europe. And we were very happy to get it even without sound. So you all can sit there and just go boop, boop, doop, doop to yourselves because you can't hear Betty do it. But she will be supported by her old friend Duke Ellington to give her something to cozy into. Most exciting is we have two of the Technicolor Fleischers from the Miami, Florida period, Raggedy Ann and Andy and the Raven, and you'll be hearing more about those from Jerry Beck. So without wasting any more time, let's get on with the tunes, bring on the show, and let's look at some great animation from the golden era. Thank you.
Wasn't that fantastic? I saw about 10 or 20 years ago when Myron Waldman was still alive. He was the head animator of Raggedy Ann, and they were doing limited edition cells of their work, Fleischer work, and they did one of Raggedy Ann and Andy. And it was, beautifully done. It was exactly like the pictures you see, and the color was magnificent. And I still remember looking at that limited edition cell going, I've never seen the film look like that. It just dawned on me, it must have looked like that, and there's got to be a way. And I knew, of course, that the UCLA archive had the Paramount pre-1950 library of films and negatives, and we were at the time restoring black and white Cocos that were silent, and that was relatively inexpensive to do. But to do a two-reeler and from the original Technicolor negatives, at the time was cost prohibitive for us. But
it's still very expensive.
It is, and so we're lucky.
And for a long time, it was cost prohibitive for ASIFA to do any of that. We had a restoration program for many years, and then it kind of fell by the wayside.
Frank, can you tell us a bit about ASIFA for those who may not be familiar with the organization?
Well, ASIFA-Hollywood is a chapter of ASIFA International. We're the most active chapter, in fact.
The acronym stands for?
If it's French, what's
Association
yeah,
Film the Animation. Yeah, something like that.
It stands for the International Animated Film Society, which is actually our corporate name. We're a nonprofit. It started years ago with June Foray and Bill Scott and several of the animators back in the day. We became a nonprofit. We're also chartered by UNESCO, believe it or not, because ASIFA International was a UNESCO organization back in the Iron Curtain days. And so we now have about 5,000 members, 4,700 and something members. We're, I think, the biggest animation organization on the planet right now. And we are probably about 80 or 85% of all ASIFA members are members of ASIFA-Hollywood. There are about 30 some odd chapters, but most of those chapters are relatively small. ASIFA East has several hundred members, and San Francisco has several hundred members, but most chapters are small. And we sponsored the Annies. And we also, about 3 years ago, Jerry, we started to see enough funds that we could start to do restoration again. We started with an old bedtime, which is
Bedtime, the
a
Max
Fleischer's,
Fleischer.
and we found out as we restored it that we had actually worked on it at some point years before and done some of the work.
Well, doing preservation is something we've been doing for a long time with UCLA, but
The
but
Raven
we've
was like
renewed
that.
it now.
You'd supplied money for the Raven over 15 years ago, and it went to a point and stopped and never completed.
That's because at that time we were flat.
Yeah.
We were just doing the Annie Awards at that time, but things have gotten better. So now we're able to do it again.
Yeah, we have a whole program to do it. And, these are neglected. These are, even though they may be owned by Paramount Pictures, Paramount's not doing anything about it. And if we don't step in, these things, what'll happen to these negatives? They'll deteriorate. They'll,
Well, the good thing is they're at least in 52-degree storage and low RH, so that they're as archivally secure as they can be
Good.
for long-term keeping. But that doesn't mean that you can see them until we've
well,
done what we've done with them.
you would know better than I, but I've heard nightmare stories, not about the Paramount Library, but I've heard about, you can walk in, open a can, and it's dust.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and these things can go really at any time unless we do something about it. And,
Well, there's one that we're working on right now, Copycat of Fleischer,
right,
where the negative is going. And we got material from England to augment it, and we were able to protect everything on it now. We've not yet put it together. It's in the pipeline being done. but-
Copycat is one of the animated antics. And the thing about that one, and even the Raven to some extent, although it went over very well, I thought, here, is that it's not about the content of the film. It's really about it's about preserving it, and keeping it alive, for future generations, one
Now,
way
the
or
films
another.
we saw tonight run the gamut from New York with Dinah all the way through the Miami years.
Yeah.
And can you tell us, I don't know which one wants to grab that gauntlet, tell us about, in a high level, the transition that the Fleischers made at Paramount from being New York producers to the state-of-the-art facility they opened in the wake of Disney's Snow White to do that level of work.
Well, I'm a Miami boy, and the building's still there. They built it in 30. They started building it in 37. I think they started to move in 38, if I'm not mistaken.
Would Educated Fish have been done there, or would that have been?
I don't know.
New York.
I don't know if
But certainly the Raven and Ragged Ann were both.
Yeah, it's probably New York. But they were at 1600 Broadway, and then there were union problems. There was a strike. Max and David used to winter in Miami Beach, and they said Florida's a right-to-work state, and they decided to put the studio there, and it's still there. I used to know a couple of guys that worked there. They had since retired, but one of them said, "It's poured concrete. It's never going away," and it's still there. And it's a police station now. It was first sold when Paramount took over the Fleischer studio. They sold it as they moved back to New York. They sold it to, I think, Pan Am. It was for a long time where pilots stayed between flights, and then it was sold to the city of Miami and became a youth center. And Jerry, you visited when it was
Yeah, I highly recommend anybody go down to Miami, just go there and pray to to it. And I went in, and it was the building. There's a floor plan of it in Leslie Cabarga's book, The Fleischer Story. So I brought that with me, and I had to prove to the cops that this was an animation studio. And I said, "What's this thing?" And on the floor plan, there's the sound stage and screening room is this 2-story structure in the back. And I said, "Oh, that's our gymnasium." I said, "Can I go there?" And I went into the gym. It was a gymnasium, it really was. But behind the basketball hoops, there were the 4 windows, for projection.
Ports.
Were still there, and can I go up there? And they were looking at me like I was out of my mind. And I just ran up there hoping to find a drawing from a Superman cartoon or something. It was pitch black. They said, "We cleaned that out for you." The only thing that was left over, I think, from the building, other than the shape and the structure of the building, was I had to relieve myself at one point. I think, in fact, that was my excuse for getting in the building. When they wanted to throw me out, I said, can I use the restroom? And that's how I got in. And but all the fixtures were all from like 1937. You can kind of tell. So Dave Fleischer used this washroom.
At one time, they were the second largest, besides the city government. They were the largest employer. They went down. Disney was, the Paramount didn't want to do features. Nobody wanted to do features. They thought Disney was going to fail. And then when, of course, no, it was a big deal. They said, "Okay, Max, you can do your feature now," because Max had been lobbying to do a feature for a while, and they had to do Gulliver's Travels while they moved from New York to Miami. They were in the process of Gulliver's Travels. Then they made Mr. Bug or Hoppity Goes to Town. They did a lot of Popeyes there. They did the second half of the Superman series there, but by the time they finished that, they were back in New York.
I think because of the success of Snow White, that's another reason they preceded Snow White by doing the two reelers, Popeye Meets Sinbad and Popeye Meets Aladdin, and those were so successful. Popeye was the biggest star of the 1930s that the Paramount had it in their contract to make a two-reeler every year. Now, why they didn't continue making Popeye and why they decided to do Raggedy Ann and then the Raven. The Raven was really one of the last Fleischer cartoons released by Paramount, and it sort of feels like in that last year that they, this was it. There's a feeling of it's kind of over. But
one of my, the 3D, the stereoscopic background,
Right.
which you don't really see in any of these. One of my influences when I was coming up in animation, Jack Ozark worked there, and he described it to me. They did move it down to Miami, but they didn't use. They used it for the opening credits for Gulliver
and Mr. Bug.
the ship, and Mr. Bug for the buildings. But basically, they didn't use it much. It was expensive. Disney was having the same issue with multiplane. It was just too expensive to use. But it was there, and he said whenever they had to do a match line, meaning they had to match a cartoon character with the 3D background, the cameraman, they'd say, "Okay, Phil, we're going to have to match Popeye climbing up these stairs." And then they'd all go to lunch. When they came back, Phil would have a cell with the match lines drawn on it where the stairs would be. And Jack said that kind of gave him job security because no one knew how he did it.
I want to ask.
Tell us your Boy Scout story real fast. What's that? The Boy Scout story.
Oh.
Yes. When I had my own little studio in Miami, a guy came to the studio one day, and when he was a kid, he was in the Boy Scouts, and he said one of the ways his troop made money was they would get boxes of cells from the Fleischer studio and clean them off, so they could be reused again, and that's how they made money.
My candy heart is just broken hearing that. I wanted to ask Scott, all of us grew up with, speaking of destroying cells, these negatives were cut, the original titles, you were talking about that. All of us here, I hope, grew up watching a lot of these things on TV with the UMM or NTA.
Paramount sold their library of their nitrate-era materials in the 50s, and the cartoons went to National Telefilms. And because of corporate intrigues and whatever, the original Paramount titles could not be presented because Paramount no longer owned them. So they did stay on the features that Universal took, but with an MCA, MCA logo leading into them. But the cartoons, the black and whites, had the Paramounts cut off and the UMM-TV Corp put on.
And they actually cut them off in the negative, on the black and
Well,
whites.
yes, the black and whites they cut from the negatives. And the Technicolor ones they cut, it seems, in the intermediates, because as we see here, they have survived here. But you also got in situations where they would be changing laboratories. And so I think it says a cartoon travesty of the Raven in Technicolor, and there's a big black bar, often covering that. I remember seeing old MGM cartoons where somebody actually had scribed out frame by frame the
Right.
Technicolored language, and you had these squiggles going on because they had Movie Lab or somebody making the prints in the 1980s. So it's the defamation that's happened to these cartoons over time in many films is pretty ghastly, and it's great when we can get back to prima facie stuff and make them look complete and clean like this.
Oh, and also I wanted to say to you that it's not just the picture. The sound
Yeah.
is magnificent, actually. That's one thing I was surprised
Raggedy
to
Ann
notice.
sounds like it was recorded almost yesterday. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tremendous difference. The Raven as well. And the Raven, when we were working on it, I found to be kind of a problematic track because the voiceovers and the narration were bold and bright and up front, but a lot of the music recording was muddy and noisy. And so the various units had different recording envelopes, and we had to try to treat them. We don't have the separation, so we had to treat them all as one and try to denoise the orchestra without bringing out without losing sibilance in the other units. So it's a real trade-off. You got to be careful. as you may notice in a number of the prints that we'll show here, you will hear a certain residual track hiss, because I do not believe in cleaning it to digital black. It does not sound correct, and when you take out too much of the floor noise, the system noise, you lose sibilance and voices, violins, all kinds of sounds that you need to hear. And it's not our fault that our speakers and playback systems now are so much better than what they had in 1939. You know, you can hear a wider dynamic range, and with that, you're getting a bit more noise. But with the current state of tools, you don't want to over-clean it. Just like, you know, you don't see digital interface here to take out little cell noogies. You know, the neutral colors, the whites, the grays, the browns, they tend to get a little clumpy at times in the paint. And that's something that other studios we know in town love to spend hours and hours digitally taking it all out and losing all the three-dimensional character of the animation.
You talk about the Newton rings on the,
Yes, the Newton
especially
rings.
whites and yellows.
Yeah, I'm not sure the audience knows what those are, but yeah, if you look into some of the painting, right, the doctors, and you can see it on.
What it was, because I used to shoot a lot of this stuff. When you laid the cells down, especially light colors and especially white and yellow, the paint clumped. And if you had more than one level of cell, and you put it down, you put the next level, and you put the glass platen down over that, it would cause this little thing, it looked a little like a gasoline ring, if you see on a gasoline thing. There's a way to get rid of it, but you had to, Mark probably knows this, you'd take cornstarch, and you would dust the cell with it, and it would it would keep it from doing it. But you know, even in the old Disney pictures, I mean, it was in all the pictures, but now when they do digital restorations, they paint them out.
Yeah, and they often do it in.
By the way, the way it was projected today is the way you're supposed to see it, but when we saw it in a screening room with you, Raggedy Ann I'm talking about, there's a big section where you can see, we saw it full frame, where the masking was off.
We did not have aperture plates in
And
our QC
there's-
room.
there's-
So we were seeing perforations in the frame lines.
Yeah, and we also saw this big section with the sprocket hole, I mean, the peg
The pegs,
bar,
you could see the
and
actual
the
pegs.
measurements and notes,
Yeah.
and all of that's on there. It's on the film. It's just,
Because they tended to shoot full aperture, and so they captured what was
you're
on the
not
animation
supposed to
stand.
see that, but it is on the
But it is-
version
it's
that
been
they
preserved,
preserved.
so it's there,
Yeah.
so.
It's really cool to see that stuff too, because you can see handwriting and you can see start and finish for a pan or something like that. It's really neat.
Yeah, yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? I've not handled a lot of the Betty Boop negatives. The ones I have looked at are from 32 or later, and they're Academy RA standard. There's a whole transition for those that may not know it. When sound came in, there you had the silent full aperture frame. Fox had optical sound, and they slapped their soundtrack on it, which now they kept the same frame height. So the movie tone aspect ratio is like 1.17 or 1.2 to 1. And it wasn't until 1932 the Academy stepped in and said, wait a minute, guys, we need a new standard. And that's where the beautiful 4x3 137 Academy frame was established. But in the years leading up to it, 30 and 31 particularly, it's the Wild West. And some of the Mickey Mouse cartoons I worked on, you could see where different units on the cartoon were shooting different optical centers. Because not only do you have the aspect, but where do you put the center of the frame? Do you leave the offset for the soundtrack, or do you use the silent full frame with a center point? And so you'd have some shots that were FA center and others that were movie tone center, and it was just catch as catch can. So to answer your question on the boops, I'm not sure, but I would not be surprised, because it was a industry-wide problem until things shook down in early 32.
Another question.
In the back. They did not record magnetically until after World War II. 1950, 49 is about the earliest you had any magnetic recording in film production in this country. So everything is off optical. In the case of Raggedy Ann and The Raven, for example, we still have the original mixed nitrate track negatives. Dinah was re-recorded off of the print, And let's see, what else did we have there? Our Educated Fish was original track negative, and Rhythm in the Ranks, same thing. So. No, they weren't cut in. It's where they did some kind of an optical or special effect in production. They might have done a bubble overlay or dissolve or something, and they'd lose a generation. But that was, the negative was in excellent shape. There were no borrowed sources for that one. And it looks a lot more, you can see it a lot more clearly now than in the old Technicolor prints, because the old IB prints were a little softer. Because of the way they were printed, they lost resolution, and it all kind of smeared and blended a bit more uniformly. There's somebody at the top there in the back.
Dana. He's got to get a mic.
Hello. I was surprised when I read Seamus Culhane's autobiography. He worked at Fleischer before he went on to Disney. He was rather critical about the quality of the animation.
Well, Seamus was very critical of many things, wasn't he?
Okay, that's what I was curious about. 'Cause
Frank,
when I read this,
why don't you address that?
yeah, I was like,
What's his question?
really? Because most of us love that craziness of Fleischer, and that they would throw anything at the screen, and I guess he wasn't always all that into. I was just kind of curious.
If you talk to any of those animators, well, they're all gone now, but from those days, especially in the ones that worked at Fleischer, they all wanted to be working at every studio. They all wanted to be working at Disney. Disney was the height. What they did, although as much as we love it, as much as people loved it then, they mainly looked at it as, I don't want to say it was junk. I don't think they really felt that way, but they didn't think they were doing anything artistic or, that Disney was doing.
Fleischer was a working class guy, and Disney became the citadel essentially. Right?
Like I said, one of the guys that helped me out at the beginning was a guy named Jack Ozark, who started at Fleischer at 17 years old and moved to Miami at 19. He thought he'd died and gone to heaven. They had a house for him. He bought a car. Girls were chasing him all over Miami Beach. He loved it. He said, he was a first generation immigrant kid. Most of the people that worked at Fleischer were New York. Some of them immigrant kids and Irish ghettos or the Jewish ghettos in New York at the time, and they were pretty rough and tumble guys. So
That shows in the cartoons.
yeah,
I
and
thought.
shows in the cartoons. The Fleischers themselves were kind of rough and tumble as well.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think of that one Betty Boop, you'll know the title offhand, where she's got the awful home life with the overbearing immigrant parents.
Minnie the Moocher.
And the flower says, "Come on, Betty," tries to get her to eat, and he eats it, and the flower dies. The parents are trying to kill Betty. I mean, that's the kind of, tenement Lower East Side feeling those cartoons had.
They were, and then you see the sexual harassment in the cartoons,
Yeah.
and they were pretty interesting. The studios had their different kind of personalities, and the Fleischers were much grittier than, say, Disney was kind of cornpone, Midwest humor, and of course the Warner Brothers were a brand of humor all their own. Well,
Let's take the person at the top in the back.
Right.
Yes.
We're going to run
The lady with red hair.
and then we have a guy down here too. So let's
Okay.
get him.
We just haven't heard from the bleachers, the nosebleeds.
I wanted to thank all three of you and UCLA and Hammer for this presentation tonight. My question's regarding the music and Betty Boop, Honest Love and True.
Well, the Betty Boop was Duke Ellington needle drops from some of his recordings in the early 30s. Since we had nothing else, there were several Duke Ellington Betty Boop shorts, like Old Man of the Mountains. We figured he was an appropriate companion for Betty tonight.
Yeah, now I'm aware of that, but and thank you. But my question is more, like this film was found in the Netherlands, so the music, was it recorded in Paramount, New York, Paramount, Los Angeles?
Well, no, it would have been recorded, let's see, Betty Boop in 38 would have been recorded in New York, correct? For whatever reason, the print that was in the Netherlands was a 16-millimeter silent print. We don't know how or why.
I think she's just asking in general where were the music recorded, right? Is that what you're asking?
Right.
Yeah, in obviously it was in New York in the early 30s. It wasn't in L.A. or
Yeah.
And then was it did you folks decide to match it up with this print, or?
Well, we didn't want to sit here in silence for 8
Oh, no,
minutes.
of course. I'm just
so
curious the
we
I'm
dropped
just-
some music behind the Betty Boop for you.
I'm just curious of the process. I mean, I'm
It's
thrilled to
It's funny
see
that
it.
we haven't heard any Fleischer music from the 30s in anything we ran tonight because the Dinah was all the
Pre-existing,
Mills
yeah,
Brothers.
yeah.
You know, so we had nothing actually from their tracks as far as I know.
But, Paramount, of course, still had their Astoria studio in Queens in that period, and they had access to, obviously, orchestras that they used there. We saw into National House, which we ran a few seasons ago here, the musical numbers in that, like Baby Rosemarie, she shot all her scenes in New York.
Yeah.
Her whole musical number about Bluebird singing the blues.
I don't think they recorded any. They may have mixed stuff in Miami, but I'm not sure they recorded any.
Yeah.
Well, they had a music stage. They definitely have
Yeah,
one
they
'cause
did.
it's in that
It's a
diagram.
basketball court.
Yeah, right. But how much they did down there, I don't know.
Gulliver, I think they did Gulliver in L.A.
Yes, sir.
He's asking about the sound effects of the drunken vacuum cleaner. I never thought I'd get a question like that. Yeah.
This poor guy has been waiting forever here.
Grab him.
You.
You.
Yeah, you.
The one who's never asked the question yet.
So I have a question. Were the negatives scanned at 4K resolution?
They weren't scanned. They were.
We were watching
analog.
35 millimeter tonight, by the way.
No. I mean, like when you were doing the restoration
No,
process.
they're analog. The color films were printed from their color separation negatives. They called that process successive exposure. They recorded one after the other on one strip of film through color filters, a filter wheel, the red, blue, and green color imagery, and on black and white negative. We preserve it to a polyester master positive, a fine grain, and then in an optical camera, recombine the three records through the inverse color filters to a color negative, and then make a color film 35 millimeter print. No scanning, no 4K, no digital.
Good golly.
And,
you.
and unlike digital, which is a wonderful medium and guaranteed to last forever, or 5 years, whichever comes first, the polyester we know has an erroneous aging test life of probably 500 years now, which is a very good thing, which means the film will be sitting untended long after we have all gone the way that the bipeds are now going.
That's why we do it.
There you go.
We have a question, lady down here.
Right.
Let's see, who was the lady?
Lady right here in the front row.
Right in front, okay.
I was just wondering if there were any preservation challenges particular to animation that you have to deal with.
On the color animation, the cost and the diminishing facility to do things like the color recombined, we are down now to one laboratory that really can do the color recombined. Educated Fish was done by Deluxe, and after that season, they shut down Film Ops. Photochem was going to do one of the color recombines, and they do not have a printer set up with a color wheel any longer. We fought with them, and I say fought in a business way, in terms of scheduling, trying to get their optical printer going, but Mr. Quentin Tarantino had it tied up with the Hateful Eight for month after month after month. So we weren't able to get Photochem, their one optical printer that's left, to get it outfitted with a color wheel because they were concerned with Hateful Eight. So that left YCM.
There's one frame of
Laboratories.
Raggedy Ann in Hateful Eight. Look for it. No, I'm joking.
So these are the challenges that we face today with those kind of cartoons. The other items were fairly straightforward, and I'm hoping that we can eventually, if the work continues and Kodak doesn't get rid of film, we can get our own lab at the archive outfitted to do our successive recombination. That would be a wonderful thing, because we have an excellent optical cameraman, but we just have never been doing that in-house. Sir. Camera negatives exist on those. They are not
Superman.
controlled by Paramount because of the DC Comics ownership. The character and the rights for those are back there, which means they are now with Warner Brothers. And there's something we dearly love to propose doing. Like Raggedy Ann, they're very expensive because of the 3-to-1 ratio. But we keep talking about it. And
There's something I'd love to do that you have. They actually made. I can't unless Mark knows of another series where they actually made a trailer for the Superman cartoons, and the materials exist at UCLA. I'd love to restore that because that's where Disney didn't even do that. Anyway.
It's something that you've got to go cultivate your well-to-do friends, because the funding for film preservation is dwindling every year. We lost a major funder in the past year, which is going to put a huge onus on us to beat the bushes to find more grant work to get money coming in to save these films while we still have access to film. And even with digital work, which, don't kid yourselves, it's a lot more expensive than film-to-film work. And it's much more fragile. But, we're entering an age now where we're seeing things like the NEA will probably go away completely. Not that we're getting money from the NEA, but the philanthropy of the arts, and film in particular, is becoming, I have not seen it so endangered in my lifetime. So that's the biggest hurdle we face right now, is finding adequate funding, and that's why we're so grateful to folks like ASIFA for stepping up to the plate.
Thank you. We wish we could do more.
Yeah, we're
And
working on
we take
increasing the-
contributions.
Do we have
working on
anybody
increasing the
else?
funding.
We have time for one more question. In case no one else has one, I'll come back to you, but. Okay.
There's
The gentleman on the aisle. These films have copyright owners, and it is up to, in this case now, Paramount for the majority of these. Yeah,
Yeah.
and everything here is a Paramount title.
Yeah.
Even the Betty Boop, it's still in copyright. They lost the materials probably back in the 40s, but the film is still a copywritten property. Betty Boop is a trademark character. We as a nonprofit archive cannot become involved with it. Now, if we were to do more Coco the Clown cartoons from 1920, it's possible, and I'm not even sure of the trademark character on that, but.
Well, there's now that some of these are restored, the copyright owner, in theory, will probably do something with them, whether they put them on Netflix or they make a deal with somebody down the road. I'm working right now with this year, I guess these films are going to be shown at festivals of preservation and other museum venues, I hope.
Our program, a version of our program goes on tour, and I hope that the animation is part of the tour, but I don't think I've seen a lineup for that yet.
I for one am going to be talking to TCM about the idea of doing this program on their air. Whether that happens or not, I hope it happens. But now
Okay.
that these exist, we can do something with them.
I have an anecdote for you real quickly, and I don't know
Uh-oh.
how true it is, but years ago I got to spend an evening with Grim Natwick, who was the original animator on the first Betty Boops, and then he did Snow White, and then he went back to Fleischer's and worked on Gulliver, and he lived to be 100. And when I met him, he was 97. He wasn't animating anymore, but he was still drawing. I thought, that's a good way to live. And he said to me, and I don't know if it was apocryphal or his view, so I'm not saying it was the right story, but he said, I went back to Fleischer's after Snow White. It was about 1939. And Max called me in one day, and he said, we're not going to do any more Betty Boops after this one. Do you want the copyright? And this was Grimm saying. And Grimm said to him, yeah, I'd like the copyright, since I invented the character. And Max said, okay. But then Grimm said, I'm a notoriously bad businessman, and I never followed up. And now that he was 97, he really would have liked the residuals, because Betty Boop had become had been a new life and she was on lunch boxes and coffee books and all cookie jars and everything in the world. And he said, I sure would like the revenue at that point. But whether that was his old version of it or not, but anyway, he didn't have it. And Mark has it, actually.
I believe Max gave him the copyright to Sally Swing. No.
Grampy. Maybe it's the copyright to Grampy.
Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. If you'd like to, you can text your friends and relatives, let them know that this program repeats tomorrow morning here at 11 a.m. free, It's part of our Family Flicks series. So come on back and bring your kids and grandkids and the neighbors' kids and get the word out. So, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, everybody.